G'day guys, Tim here, the guy in the hat from Beat the Reset, of course, with my very good friend and associate Bisher from Stormrake. How are you, Bish?
Good to see you, my friend. Good to be here. Coffee in hand, ready to rock and
On
roll.
the couch
Yes,
too.
sir.
Fantastic new couch.
Your son helped us pick out this couch,
Yes, he
actually.
did, and blue.
Yeah,
Great color as well.
yeah.
It fits the decor. So today we're going to cover a couple of topics, and today we're going to be talking. Obviously, I just get a quick update on the markets on Bitcoin.
Yep.
Everybody wants to know what's happening with
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes, sir.
And then we're going to talk about the ISO coins because I've been asked a number of times why it is Beat the Reset spend so much of it spent its first 12 months talking about ISO,
Mhm.
and now we're switching over to Bitcoin.
Yep.
There's a very good reason for that. But first of all, let's get to now, of course, Bish is known as the Baron of Bitcoin because he is an expert in this subject. And
Yes,
we
sir.
have been educated every day. Guy in the Hat has had a huge education from this man. So a lot of our work is still research in progress. And I feel like we've really advanced
Yeah.
what we know about this stuff now.
Goes both ways. Like it's such an awesome dialogue to have, and I'm constantly learning from you as well. So it's good to have that information exchange and
Yeah.
not being at a position where it's like, I've got something that I've got better than you, or vice versa. It's like we actually want to learn from each other, which is really powerful.
Yeah, well, you have critical information that I was not privy to, that you can't be privy to. It's like when you go to that mechanic that knows this car and he
Yes.
knows something that's not in the book,
Yes, sir.
and you brought information to the table that was like, okay, right. So at some point we had to kind of shift into the wind, turn the spinnaker into the wind and go, okay, we need to be on board with this kind of sentiment.
Yeah.
So um, as a result, Beat the Reset is becoming a very big advocate of Bitcoin
Yes,
based
sir.
because it fits our portfolios better
Yeah.
because of the sovereignty, because of the decentralization,
It's our
because
ethos.
it's our ethos. That's
Yes.
it. That's a good word.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where Bitcoin is at the moment and also where it's going.
Yeah, so BTC is trading at around 67K. We were at 59,000 just last week on Friday. The reason why we've had this significant jump in market price is coming down to the fact that Donald Trump is leading in the polls and leading on the prediction markets as to who's going to win the presidential election. I have to do that. I'm sorry.
Yes. Fair enough.
So he's leading in the presidential election, and he's got a big platform based on Bitcoin advocacy. He's going to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Wants to put the US dollar onto the Bitcoin standard. All kinds of things that are very, very bullish for BTC. So everybody's trying to front run his ascendancy by buying Bitcoin at the moment. So I'd be watching the prediction markets on Polymarket, Poly market, free website. You can jump on and watch the polls essentially.
Hmm.
But the reason why I put a little bit more weight on something like Polymarket, for example, is that people are wagering on it, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of money on hand. So it's a really good sentiment check as to
Yeah.
who thinks is going to win, because it's not just about a matter of ringing up and doing a Gallup poll and saying who do you think is going to win. There's no incentive to give the right answer. Whereas if you're wagering, then it makes sense that you're going to be betting more accurately, or putting in a bet that's a bit more reflective of your genuine answer.
Hmm.
So, anyways, so he's ran away, and it's led to the price jumping up. But I just want to be really clear about something, is that regardless of whoever comes into power, Harris, Trump, Republican, Democrat, left wing, right wing, it doesn't matter, because they both are going to spend money in an insane amount that we have never seen before, because each quantitative easing that comes through and each fiscal policy or fiscal budget that comes through has to be larger than the one before. They just spend money on different reasons,
Mm.
right? So the continued issue of inflation, currency devaluation is going nowhere.
Mm.
So even though I am saying that Trump is more short-term bullish for price on Bitcoin, don't get it twisted and assume that Harris is bearish, because they're both going to be printing insane amounts of money to support their presidency over the next 4 years, to then be able to support their voter blocks on different reasons why they vote for them.
Sounds like they're both working for the Federal Reserve, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, and then the
Jeez,
Federal
that's a
Reserve is
terrible thing to
working
say.
for the BIS, and then there's
Wow,
yeah,
it's like it's all to do with money, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
And I've been sitting around waiting for the debt ceiling to come down. I've been watching the $35 trillion on US debt clock spinning
yeah.
up and up and
It's
up, and I've
it's
been
it's
waiting
at
for it to come.
35.7 now. It's accelerating in terms because the interest base continues to rise.
Right. Well, because I've been waiting for it to come down. Because aren't we supposed to be paying off the debt at some point?
Look, I mean, yeah,
It's
bit chicken and egg, but you know what they'll most likely do? They'll devalue the dollar to pay off their debt.
no.
No,
What?
I wouldn't
Okay,
do that.
damn it. Okay, that's a conspiracy theory. So QE is
Yeah.
good for Bitcoin.
Yes, because Bitcoin is a scarce, finite asset.
Mm.
Only 21 million units of it.
Oh yeah, I want to ask you about this. You said the other day there's a limited supply
Yes.
and it cannot be expanded.
No.
So as we get close to that, and this was something I got asked a lot, it sort of raised a lot of questions that so essentially you could get to a day where Bitcoin is no longer available.
Yeah, well, I always believe there'll be a market price for it. And I always, because Bitcoin is freedom money,
Yeah.
right? You could always, it's the most free liquid money market we have in the world. So even though there'll be no new supply and all of the circulating supply is fully unlocked and you can't get any more Bitcoins, I always believe that Bitcoin will be circulating through the economy and it will have a clearing price because at the end of the day, that's what you want a good currency to be. You want it to be frictionless. You want it to be able to circulate and percolate throughout the economy. That's a great money. And the beauty of it is that nobody can control it, right? So when you have a limited supply, finite, and permissionless currency,
Mm.
the world's your oyster.
Yeah.
And you can run a much better financial system on a Bitcoin standard.
So the value of Bitcoin, can that go up? Would that rise the closer we get to the fact that it's becoming scarce now? I mean, if it's going to push the price of Bitcoin up, the
Yeah,
scarcity?
well, look at the what it's denominated against. It's denominated against other fiat currencies,
Mm.
US dollar, Aussie dollar, South African rand, euros, GBP, right? Those fiat currencies have an unlimited supply, unlimited
Yes.
supply.
Yeah.
So when you have an unlimited supply of one currency and a limited supply of another currency, and there's infinite demand coming into the one that's more scarce, the price is theoretically unlimited
Yeah.
because you will constantly have devaluation in the currency that it's trading against.
Yeah.
Which is what Sam and I would, good old Sam from Adams Bullion, shout out, love you, Sammy. We started off in currency trading desks,
Mm.
right? FX desks. And we would be looking at the value of different currencies against one another, Aussie dollar against the yen,
Mm.
euro against the pound. We traded things like Brexit together, like crazy, crazy volatility. So the whole point of it is that you measure the value of one currency against the other.
Mm.
Now, all of these worthless fiat currencies, in my humble opinion, are shitcoins
Mm.
because there's no cap to it.
Mm.
The euro, which only got created in the 90s, has lost 95% of its value against gold in 25 years of existence, right? It's a failed currency,
Yeah.
but it still circulates throughout the euro economy.
Mm.
The pound sterling used to get you, why is it called a pound sterling,
Mm.
right? Because 1 pound, right, note,
Mm.
used to get you a pound of sterling silver,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
Now it gets you not even 20 grams, 30 grams of the
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's lost considerable amounts of its value based off what it used to be called. So this is why I'm always really bullish on BTC because something that you and I talked about is the biometallic standard,
Oh, yes.
right?
I love this idea you have
Yeah.
with the Bitcoin gold standard.
Well, that's your idea. I borrowed it from you.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
I'll
yes.
take
Well,
credit for that.
well, it's
You've heard it here first.
well, the idea is that where do we think that currencies are going to go,
Mm.
right? We know that fiat currencies are going to be devalued and they're going to become worthless. Economies and nations are going to back their nation state with gold because that's what they know it's worked for 5,000 years. But they're not going to trade with each other in gold because it's a polarized planet.
Right.
Nobody trusts each other.
Right.
So what they are going to trade with each other in is Bitcoin, cross-border, instant settlement, bang, right? And
Mm.
not having to trust anyone. I think that'd be a good segue as well into the ISOs, because a lot of people talk about
Yes.
cross-border settlements with ISOs, and
Well,
we can talk
just
about
before you
that.
get to the ISOs,
Yeah,
I wanted to just because you always say so many things and they're amazing, and I always want to unpack each one of them,
yeah,
and we never have enough time.
yeah.
You said something, so we'll put ISOs as our next topic, but just on the other night on the channel, you mentioned something fascinating, and it was interesting. Somebody said, "When do you see Bitcoin going to like a million whatevers?" And you said, "Well, it depends which currency you're measuring it in.
Yes, correct.
Because if you're measuring in US, it isn't there yet.
Yeah.
But if you measure it in, I think Lebanese pounds,
Lebanese pounds is 5.5 billion, right?
billion,
Right?
right?
5.5
So we're
billion.
there by a squillion times over.
Yeah, and you, if you want to measure it in South African rands, it's there.
So
Nigerian naira, it's there. It's just a matter of time as to when it's going to get there with other fiat
So,
currencies.
so what, and this has been my great fascination on this journey. US dollar has like 1 cent of buying power against its gold price in 1913.
Correct.
What, I mean, it's still a tier one asset, which means there are only really three tier one assets, gold being one of them,
Yeah.
the US dollar being another. How much longer are we going to keep doing stupid things like comparing Bitcoin? Because I mean, essentially, Bitcoin is largely considered to be measured in US dollars,
Correct.
but the US dollar hasn't got any value.
Correct.
So this is really where it becomes like a really interesting kind of dichotomy. You know, it's
Well, petrodollar, for example, why are we pricing constantly oil, which is the energy that fuels the world,
yeah,
in US dollars, which is it's a scarce, it's hard to produce.
yeah,
I love oil. I'm an Arab, so naturally it's in my blood.
yeah,
But the way I see it is that the US dollar is holding on to its value through military power,
correct. Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And
Yeah,
this is why uh, I see Bitcoin and gold as freedom money, because it's also peace that it delivers. Because you don't have to enforce Bitcoin and gold at the end of a gun, right? Because if you wish to get onto a Bitcoin standard, if you wish to get onto a gold standard
mm,
or a BTC gold standard, then your life is a lot better for it
mm,
without having to expend a single bullet,
yep,
because the network and the way that gold is decentralized, the way Bitcoin is decentralized, it's not reliant upon anyone. And if
yep,
we wish to transact with each other, right? And I say, hey, I like your new Mercedes that you picked me up in this morning. I'll exchange it for you for zero point 0.5 of a Bitcoin.
yeah,
And you say, yep, done.
yeah,
Transaction
easy
settled.
done.
That's it, done.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's no enforcement of which currency you have to use. And that's why that's on the micro level.
Mm.
If we expand it up to the macro level, this is why currencies or international trade and settlement will occur in Bitcoin,
Yeah,
because it's a trustless way to transact value.
absolutely. So, ISOs. Now, this is a great topic because and we'll segue back. And
Yeah,
again, thanks for explaining all
no,
that
that's okay.
because I mean, we are going to have to at some point as investors. Something we're going to have to correlate is what are we comparing these out of assets to? I mean, that
Yes.
was really the point of that, just that previous conversation. What are we comparing it to? If you compare it to mangoes, if you compare it to US dollars, if you compare it to Lebanese pounds or Zimbabwe, whatever they
Yeah,
are,
yeah, yeah.
it changes the value of the asset totally,
Correct.
depending on what you're comparing it to.
Correct.
But the asset itself has intrinsic value, is
Correct.
what we're saying.
Yeah.
So, okay, so ISO. Now, this is a thing that my channel grew up on ISO,
Yeah.
and long before Stormrake was on the scene. And I was talking about the fact that it's a central bank messaging system
Yeah.
written in certain code, da 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 da. Da. And when I started talking to you, when I met you, uh, there was an awakening for Beat the Reset.
Yeah.
I realized that we had the right approach but it didn't kind of match everything that we were speaking about because Bitcoin matches our portfolios perfectly.
Yeah.
Whereas now this is the bit that I want to get to here is that you explained to me that ISOs are in system.
Yes.
Now, up to that point, I hadn't considered that. I'd done all the research,
Yeah.
but I hadn't considered in system. And I want you just to briefly explain to your audience why is it in system compared to Bitcoin, which is out of system?
That's a fantastic question. So, for example, the Ripple Foundation, which manages the Ripple network, has about 120 nodes, and it's all centrally controlled. Now, people talk to me like, oh, but XRP is faster and it allows, and it's like that's not the point, right? We're not, we don't want there to be control of the currency system. We don't want control. The problem that got us into this entire mess with currency devaluation, with all kinds of things that have absolutely screwed over the middle class, was because they could not control their money. Their spending power was controlled. Their purchasing power was controlled. How and where and when they can spend their money was controlled, right? If you're in Australia, you need to use Aussie dollars. If you're in the US, you need to use US dollars. You can only use legal tender. And then they create artificial foreign exchange markets. Then there's things like onshore rates and offshore rates with like the Chinese yuan, for example. The South African rand had an onshore rate and offshore rate. My country that I've hailed from, Lebanon, still to this day has an onshore rate and an offshore rate. What that means in simple terms is that you, as a local, have to spend a lot higher than what they're showing the international market in terms of what the value of their currency is. So bringing that back to ISOs are good. MX technology is great, and adoption of this technology by the banks is fantastic, right? Especially by the central banks, right? Not that I'll ever advocate for anything that a central bank does, but it certainly allows for the circulation and adoption of distributed ledger technology to percolate throughout the collective zeitgeist. But you don't want to put your eggs in one basket, which is MX and ISO technology. They can play a role. You can buy your XRP, your XLM, your Algo, your Hedera, no problems with them whatsoever. But the lion's share of your portfolio should be in Bitcoin, not because of its performance, which will outperform these other tokens, but because of the fact that it's true freedom money. Do you want to have a decentralized global network of Bitcoin nodes working for you and keeping your money safe and yours alone? Or do you want to go onto a new standard, which is with more rules, with programmable money? Like that's a huge problem. Why would you want to have your spending power be programmable and controlled by central banks?
Yeah.
Why would you want that? Like people sell that to me as if that's a good thing.
And it's interesting because that was the point that, it's such an interesting progress for Beat the Reset. This transition that we've been going through with Stormrake is that we were very big on ISO, and we still are. It's just that what you have with Bitcoin gives us what gold and silver are to the commodity space in terms of actual monetary system, decentralized within your possession, all these things that we were missing slightly. We kind of got it, but we missed the key point. That these ISOs were great, but they didn't really fit the kind of outer system portfolio, the hedged portfolio we were really looking for.
Correct.
It wasn't really until you explained it to us, and again, what people need to understand, I guess, is these are technologies that are fairly newish. They've only been around sort of 15 years or so ish. And we are trying to understand them and where they fit in the
I'll bring this up for you, right? So we can actually look at it together. And you can like run your own analysis, right? So we know that Bitcoin has 21 million units. XRP at the moment is trading at 54 cents. But you can see here in terms of its max supply is 100 billion, right? So, this is CoinGecko, ladies and gentlemen. You can download it onto your smartphones. But 100 billion units of XRP is what's out there. And that's by no means is it fully diluted yet. It's not fully in the market yet. So let's say the market price goes from 55 cents to 80 cents. Insiders can dump new tokens onto the market and be able to extract the value difference between that, right? Because there's 100 billion of them and there's no hard cap on that. It could easily be increased to 200 billion. 500 billion.
So there's no cap on it at all.
There is currently a.
So when they say the cap is 100 billion, that's not set in stone.
It's not set in stone because it's centralized, right? When it's centralized, you can change the rules of the system, right? That you can easily reprogram how much there is.
Yes.
Right. You just need to reach consensus with 120 different nodes that this is the rules of play now.
Right.
and then bang, now you've got 200
And
polling
that
stations.
can't be done with Bitcoin.
No.
See, this is really where the education kicked in for us.
Yeah.
And we understood what you were saying in a heartbeat and realized that. So I guess for a lot of my audience who've purchased ISO, and some of these RWA real world assets, like,
Perfect.
and so on.
Good holdings. Don't get me wrong.
So yeah, so there's nothing, I guess, really where I'm asking you as an expert in the space. It's not that they've done anything wrong. It's
No.
just that if we're looking at a hedged sovereign portfolio.
The best way I can describe it is, and I'm sorry for all my vegetarians and vegans out there with this following example, but those fake hamburgers and the fake meat that they have out there,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, shock horror.
Yeah. That's
Bish, you should have warned me.
that
Don't know what you're talking about.
It's like comparing a beautiful grass-fed sirloin steak, right? 250 grams from the Yarra Valley Ranges, right? You have this beautiful cattle that's been looked after. You have that beautiful medium rare with some red wine juice. That's perfect, right? Whereas if you have this fake meat concoction, it's kind of there. It kind of like
Right.
if you were to like close your eyes and like
Right,
really
yeah.
try to think about it, it's kind of the
Yeah.
same, but it's not. You can immediately taste the difference,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I'm saying is the analogy here is that it's close, but it's not the real deal,
Got it.
right? That's really what it comes down to. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't hold this in your portfolio. I'm not saying sell it all, it's garbage. That's never have I ever once advocated for that.
No.
Never. But I just want to be really clear that the three main categories of token that makes up my portfolio is Bitcoin, lion's share, 70-80%. The other bit of difference is smart contract layer ones, like Ethereum and Solana, for example. A couple that I'm looking at right now is Sui and Rune. They're also good smart contract layer one platforms that I'm interested in. And then the rest of my portfolio is rounded out with ISO and MX technology and RWAs, because if the central banks are going to be on it and pushing it hard, then I'm going to want a piece of it as well.
Right.
But you don't want to underpin your portfolio on a centralized, controlled, programmable money. You just want to be exposed to the upside from a portfolio basis, so that way you can make money on the upside. But the core of your portfolio should be BTC, because it can't be, you know the rules of play. It can't be taken from you. It's sovereign money. I don't care about the price of Bitcoin ever, because I want to buy it because it's just sovereign money. I don't give a shit what the price is.
Right.
Whereas everything else, even Ethereum, Solana, Sui, ISOs, MX, I'm sensitive about the price because I'm in and out to maximize my fiat value, so that I can get more Bitcoin, so I can get more gold. So that's how I see them playing as a role.
I got to ask you that, because there's this interesting you said about Bitcoin. I just buy it. There are people that write to me all the time, Tim, when's the best time to buy Bitcoin? What's the answer to that?
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The best
So
time
you
to
shouldn't
buy,
be sitting here waiting for it to come down in
no.
price. Because I've got people go, oh, look, it could drop. Should I just wait?
Look, I'll bring it up for you, right? So, for example, in the time that like XRP right now is 54 cents, I'd be a buyer of it at around 50 cents, for example. However, BTC right now is 67.3K. I don't really care. I'm buying that today. If it was even 80K, I'd be buying.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. But I'd be a lot more sensitive with the price of say something else, because it's like I'm not expecting it to be a long-term hold.
Yeah.
I'm expecting to come in, realize some value, trade that value into something else. Like I love trading, right? And it's something I live for. I live for these markets.
Yeah.
But to be fair, if it's Bitcoin and gold, I could not care less about the price.
Yeah, I'm the same.
You could tell me it's $1 billion. I'm like, fantastic. Tell me how much I can get of it today.
And the other thing is, this notion that you don't sell it.
Correct. Never sell. Right.
People say to me, but how does Bish live? How come he's not starving? You don't look like you're starving to me.
I'm eating well. I'm mean,
I'm not saying you're a good addict, but I'm saying you don't look like you're struggling to me.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting point, because I noticed on the channel last night, a lot of people said, I saw them say it. Well, how, you said, look, I'm not interested in cash. I'm not interested in cash. People going, but you've got to pay bills. You've got to keep your gas. You've got to pay your rent. It's like, they think that somehow something magical must be happening in your world that's not happening in their world. What's the difference here? Is it a mindset? Is it How do you describe that to people?
So it's two things, right? It's two things. One, collateralization, right? Which is a whole topic in and of itself, and I don't think we've got enough time for it today.
No, but we will be talking a lot about that.
We will. Watch this place. Stormrake is doing something pretty special around that.
Indeed.
So, and the second thing that I talk about is when you get denominated in Bitcoin, everything gets cheaper, right? So I'm spending less amount of units of my BTC to get the equivalent amount of goods that I would have needed 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? I've got a lovely growing family. I've got my son, my wife, my daughter, right? Hopefully more kids in the future. But everything for me, when I'm on a Bitcoin standard, just gets cheaper over time.
Yeah.
You know, diapers, family grocery run, going out for a spot of lunch, going out for a spot of dinner, taking the family away for a holiday. Everything gets cheaper. Everything gets cheaper because you're pricing your consumer goods and consumer services, which are in a scarce asset. So it's a huge, like once you can wrap your head around that and you make that shift, like it's honestly like unlocking a parallel economy.
It is. And, and I think people listening to this would agree with that because, if we go back to commodities and seeing the gargantuan rise in commodities in the 2.5 years that I've been doing this channel, people are starting to understand the difference between wealth and being in the system spending cash.
Yes.
Wealth is something else.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's a different value system. Like
Correct.
the value system you're working on is an entirely, the debt system has no value.
No.
And people just constantly almost the debt system, people who do debt, it feels to me like one of those jumping castles where you have to have the fan running the whole time. And if you turn the fan off, the whole thing just falls apart. So as long as you're pumping the cash in, the thing stays up. But Bitcoin and gold and silver seem to be very different. The castle just stays up by itself. You don't need to pump anything.
It's built on stone.
It's built on stone, yeah.
So this is the thing that also people don't realize is that productivity and hours worked have
Yes.
gone through the roof.
Oh, yes.
Yet your purchasing power has gone down. So you're working more for less.
Yes.
Right? Whereas if you just get onto a new value system, Bitcoin and gold, and you denominate in that, you turn all of your cash, your earnings, your monthly income, whatever it is, your business income, into Bitcoin and gold and silver, all of a sudden your value system changes. So rather than working and then working more hours and then having a shortfall, then getting more debt, and then you needing to work more hours to then pay back that debt, it's just a very, very vicious, toxic system that you're constantly going to break your back over. And then when you pass from this mortal plane, you don't leave anything to your children other than a monumental amount of debt, right? Which is a really horrific thing to do. But the middle class, even upper middle class, tends to let people into that, let their children fall into that, let their grandchildren fall into that. So it just becomes this toxic debt system. And who benefits from this? The BIS, right? Because a central bank, what is our liability is a central bank asset, right? Is really, really toxic. So you just got to opt out. And you opt out by getting onto Bitcoin and gold, and you're all of a sudden on a new value system.
Totally.
Like
Absolutely agree with that. And of course, you're right. The BIS does benefit, and we can see that the guy Augustin Carstens has definitely benefited.
He's eating well, man.
He's not starving. Love to know who makes his suits. Well, look, that's all we've really got time for, Bish. I guess the big question before we go is Bitcoin. You say this fabulous line. What position should people have in Bitcoin? Like this is the question I want to ask you today.
Yeah.
And I need to reinforce this. What position or what do you say to people about what type of, let's say they at the moment they have no position, they're just sitting paying off a debt. They're listening to this going, I don't know whether I should do this. What do you say about a position in Bitcoin?
Get off zero. Get off zero. Whatever position you're in, right? Debt, income, business, children, no children, doesn't matter. Get off zero, my dear friends, please. Right?
So the only position, you say this fabulous line, the only position is to have
a position.
Or to have no position. The only wrong position
is zero.
Is zero, right?
Correct. So the only wrong position is zero. Once you get off zero, you're in a far better position. You're in a far better place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's super important to realize and super important to understand.
Yeah.
Is that once you get off that zero, you're in a far better position immediately.
Yes.
Immediately. It doesn't matter whether it's $2,000, $1,000, $10,000. Once you get off zero, then you're in a far better position. And then it just becomes a sliding scale of your 1 or 2% certain about Bitcoin in terms of where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So you allocate 1 or 2% of your portfolio. And then as you learn more and as you understand more, that sliding scale increases over time.
Yeah.
So it becomes a 10% position, a 20%, 30, 40, 50%.
Yeah.
And you just modulate it based off your certainty levels on Bitcoin. Now, I'm 100% locked in, so I'm 100% exposed, but that doesn't mean that's where you have to start. You start once you get off zero. You start small, understand it, grow it from there.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. How do they get in contact with you, Bish?
Go to stormrake.com, company number and email is there, info@stormrake.com. Our phone number is there. You can also call me on 0478 675 399. Same number that my wife and my mother reach me on. I'll take your call first and then get back to them secondly. But yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. Pretty
Fantastic,
straightforward.
Bish. Love your work. Of course, fantastic.
My man.
Mate,
Thank
love
you,
your
brother.
work. Love your work. And Bisher from Stormrake, the Baron of Bitcoin, the guy that knows literally everything there is to know about Bitcoin. And you've made some incredibly, some of the BTR family incredibly wealthy already. And the wealth is just going to continue from here. That's it for me. Guy in the Hat and Bisher from Stormrake. I hope you've enjoyed this little podcast today. We'll be doing a bunch of these, of
Yes,
course.
sir.
We're off to Adelaide tomorrow for a talk with Sam from Adams Bullion. And remember, as always, look after your health. That's the big one. Look after your families. And as always, make good choices.